permeates everywhere. So there are think tanks, there are revolving doors between think tanks and Harvard. There is, for example, the Chinese, the open air prisons for Uyghur Muslims. The two CCP apparatchiks who managed this and expanded this are actually selected and trained by the Kennedy School and sent back, and this is the work they are doing. It's just not an academic institution.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನೆನ್ನೆ ತಾನೇ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿ ಮುಗಿದಿದೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿಯ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು. ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಪಂಚದ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದನೂ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಮತ್ತು ರಾಜೀವ್ ಮಲ್ಹೋತ್ರಾರಿಗೆ ವಿಶ್ವದಾದ್ಯಂತ ಒಂದು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಅಭಿಮಾನಿಗಳ ವರ್ಗ ಇರೋದರಿಂದ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಡೀತಿದ್ರು, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡಬೇಕಾದಂಥ ಅನಿವಾರ್ಯತೆ ಇದೆ. ಟುಡೇ we have on stage 4 people who I personally have grown up reading, who I personally admire. Rajiv Malhotra ji is one of the most prominent Bauddhika Kshatriyas that our culture has produced in its defense in the last so many decades. Many young people, especially of my generation, have grown up reading his books, his articles, and we have greatly benefited from their deep insights and have also obtained great clarity on important issues concerning our society and polity, thanks to his painstaking research and original writing. There could not have been a better time for bringing out this book. I thank Rajiv Malhotra ji on behalf of all of you and on behalf of a young India for bringing out this very, very important, much needed original book. I also want to acknowledge and thank the presence of Vijaya Viswanathan ji, who is the co-author of this book, has contributed immensely to its coming to shape and life today. We also have today amongst us Professor Vaidya, one of the most wittiest commentators. Professor Vaidya just after I was elected as Member of Parliament, my training has been in law and I was practicing as a lawyer at the High Court. Professor Vaidya was kind enough to call me one day and tell me that as a policy maker, as a young parliamentarian, it is very essential that you have at least a basic grounding in the fundamentals of economics, especially economics concerned with the Indian society and India's political economy. Many solutions proposed by economists from the West do not hold good in the Indian context, and it is very essential for a young parliamentarian like you to be grounded in these fundamentals. And Professor Vaidya took out a lot of his personal time, traveled all the way from his residence to my place, and lectured me, tutored me in multiple sessions. In that sense, he is my guru. It also shows how concerned and how sincere he is about the dharmic and Indian cause. I thank Professor Vaidya for everything that he has done. It's a lifetime spent in the service of the nation. Young India is grateful to you, sir, and your ideals and your values are something that we will all strive to live by. Professor Jaggi again is Well, a lot of people today's day and age are self-proclaimed professors, especially the Arbal Naxal variety. So I was one of the first interns of the Swarajya magazine. So today Swarajya is a very important publication. Again, creating so much of, throwing so much light, bringing so much clarity on issues concerning India today, and Jaggi's articles, his writings, are extremely well followed. And even to this day, if there is an issue on which I need clarity, on which I want to understand what is good for India, is Jaggi's articles that I go back to and I read and learn. Many of my parliament speeches I have borrowed heavily from Jaggi's writings. So we have 4 stalwarts today with us. On behalf of all of you, I want to solicit, I want to acknowledge their presence and thank all of them for the contribution they all have done. Friends, I want to, as briefly as possible, try to put in context the very important work that Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Viswanathan has brought before all of us. This morning, I woke up to this tweet. I had bookmarked it because it was so scary and concerning. Yeah, it said, it was retweeted or it was shared on Facebook by an Indian parent of a post made by an American parent of a 10-year-old girl child who had been administered a hormone blocker injection. And the narrative, the American parent had written on top of the pictures of the young minor child being administered the injection, was that as a parent of a transgender child, I am stoked that my child has got its first hormone blocker injection. And the person who had shared it was a young Indian parent who had approvingly shared it with a heart emoji. So this crazy wokeism, which is the result of, or in popular lingo, the critical race theory that Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Viswanathan address in this book, is not very far away. It has entered our country, it has entered our minds, it has entered our neighborhoods and our homes. This is the scale of challenge, both at the societal, family, personal, and civilizational level, that we are confronted with. Colonization is a constant process. Colonization did not stop in 1947. Its modes and its methods have only changed and transformed. It has only gotten more subtle, more sophisticated, and more nuanced. Perhaps there is no better quote than that of John Henrik Clarke to understand the debilitating effects of colonization on the colonizer's mind. He says, and I quote, "To control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture." Let me repeat this. To control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And when your conqueror makes you ashamed of your culture and your history, he needs no prison walls and no chains to hold you. So these renewed waves of colonization in today's era, where all pervasive, omniscient digital technologies are bringing it to our doorsteps at unprecedented speed, it is very important that counter responses, counter intellectual responses by effective scholars are made essential. It is in this context that this book, Snakes in the Ganga, the metaphor itself is very instructive and educative. The Ganga, while all of us consider as the holiest of the holy rivers, can also shelter snakes which can be deadly and poisonous. Many people on our side of the spectrum, who are well-meaning intellectuals, well-meaning influential billionaires, influential industrialists, many a time support causes and projects which are the handiwork of what the original book called the Breaking India Forces. A case in point in recent memory was a magnanimous grant given by a very reputed Bangalore-based foundation to translate works of Sheldon Pollock, which, thanks to certain people on our side who ensured that it didn't go through, would even have gotten the stamp of approval by a very, very reputed, authoritative, traditional mutt of India. So this is the kind of challenge that we are facing today. The Marxist worldview, in essence, treats the society as a perpetual fight between A versus B. This outlook of the Marxists is in direct contradiction to the Vedantic view, which believes in the idea of sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, that there must be eternal harmony and eternal peace. If a Marxist looks at a family, he does not look at it as a harmonious partnership between a man and wife, a husband and wife. It is an unequal partnership where it's a perpetual fight between a husband versus a wife. The same framework, when applied to a school, is a teacher versus a student. The same framework, when applied to society, is upper caste versus lower caste, whites versus blacks, rich versus poor, industrialist versus the union, the employee versus the employer. So this is essentially a framework which perpetuates eternal conflict. This fundamentally, at its very root, incentivizes a particular individual or a person to perpetually play a victim card and weaponize the identity of victimhood and use it for political divisions. We have seen this at play in the United States. We have seen this at play in Europe. We have also seen this at play in the last so many years in our very own country. So these basic frameworks have to be challenged. If these are the colonization, the nuanced, sophisticated academic colonizations, the political narrative colonizations that are taking place at one level, we also witness how, even in our dress codes, sometimes I wonder, if you visit the civil court in Chennai, Professor Vaidya will relate, in the peak of summer, a lawyer is expected to dress up in a three-piece suit with a all-black gown. And it's a dress that doesn't even suit this country's culture, this country's climate. So the colonization that has set in and is taking different forms must be contested at various levels. Even very recently, you must have observed, there was this this artist who became extremely popular on Instagram and Twitter. He was a groundnut seller from a village in West Bengal. It was quite a very popular reel. I don't remember the song today. Kacha Badam, that's the one, right? So, after the initial success, this one of the top brands, I think Z or some label, some music label like this, produced a more, a studio quality version of this guy, and his interview started going around. Within a week's time, we saw the change in his attire. There was no tilak on his forehead. His dress, which was so thoroughly Indian and so thoroughly rustic, changed to a three-piece suit. Because now he was successful. And success has a certain way it should look. And that is the Western way. So this is how, at both the popular culture level, as well as the academic and political narratives level, the colonization project is going on unfettered. Added to this, we all are living in the day and age where opaque algorithms are deciding what we choose when we go to eat, what clothes we want to buy, to the prime minister we want to elect. And these algorithms are all written by individuals who have certain political ideological preferences. All these big tech companies have people at extremely influential positions who have unwittingly consumed, without critical thinking, this woke garbage. And this is extremely dangerous because these tech giants and tech corporations wield more power than presidents and prime ministers of nations. For the first time in human history, we have handed over the power to shape public opinion and human consciousness to a few opaque algorithms whose ideological biases cannot be audited. These tech corporations, most of which are based out of Silicon Valley, which Rajiv Malhotra very painstakingly through evidence proves, is, along with the Harvard University, the hotbed for this new wokeism. These corporations are controlling the political narrative of the world today. Also, the other very important point that all of us need to take away from the book, which is extremely relevant in today's globalized context, is that if these narratives are not met with effective, credible, and intelligent responses, they will have disastrous results, not just for India, not just for Bharat, but for Bharatiyas around the world. And today, while we are enjoying the news reports of Indian origin CEOs taking leadership positions in multinational companies, there may not be a day very far if these responses, these woke arguments, if left unmet, that the very large number of extremely capable, talented Indians who are in these multinational corporations around the world, the Indian diaspora, who have risen through their merit and hard work, are discriminated in the most devastating manner and are literally thrown to wolves. So it is very important that these intellectual responses are given to protect and preserve the Indian diaspora, the Bharatiya diaspora at large as well. Friends, it is in this context that this book is extremely important. There is so much more that we can say, but I urge all of you to read this, and there's a very interesting panel discussion that all of us have. The book also mentions very briefly about the now very prevalent cancel culture. I just want to spend 30 seconds on this because I myself was a victim of this when I visited Australia. But thanks to the Australian government, which did not budge to the pressure of these leftists, this cancel culture did not gain traction during my visit there. However, all of you have seen how recently in the United Kingdom, this same cancel culture was used not just by academics, but also complemented by street violence, and how our temples and how the Bharatiya diaspora in United Kingdom was a victim of this. I believe that those who believe in this ideology, the new Wokeism, all of them are very fervent and ardent followers of Idi Amin, who believed that I can guarantee you freedom of speech, but I can't guarantee you freedom after speech. We have traditionally, civilizationally been a culture which has celebrated unfettered freedom of expression, thought, and debate. This is a culture which celebrated the debates between Mandana Mishra and Adi Shankara. This is a culture which, even if you go to the remotest of villages, whether even it is in Manipur or whether it is in Kumbakonam, you will hear stories of debate, discussions, and harmonious, I underline again, harmonious differences. This is something that is vital to human civilization and its growth. While this book is an extremely important step towards meeting these intellectual, academic responses, I also feel that as Bharatiyas, there are two important things that we must do. One is that we must truly live the life of Bharatiyas. And by that I mean, we must speak our languages, we must wear our clothes, We must learn our traditional arts and music. We must celebrate our festivals in all fervor. These will keep us grounded and these will keep us immune from these woke narratives. In addition to that, I also feel that post 2014, we are truly blessed with a political climate in India and outside where we need not just restrict ourselves to responding to the intellectual responses coming from the West, but also very prominently and vociferously provide for alternatives. This is a civilization which has sent millions of monks to China, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, and helped those nations understand our worldview and assimilate our worldview. Our ancestors, like Rajaraja Chola, went beyond the shores of this country and transmitted and helped assimilate people in other cultures, people in other geographies, the true values of this civilization. The time has now come for us not just to respond, but to also vociferously put forth our alternative worldview. I think in this global context, in this very important political context, Snakes in the Ganga is going to be a very, very important educative primer for everybody who is interested in India's future. I thank Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Viswanathan for having taken such painstaking efforts to put this book. Thank you so much. And we all look forward to reading this book in full. Thank you so much, sir.
So, after that wonderful speech by Tejasvi, I must say that my part of it might be a little underwhelming because he may have interned in Swarajya, but in public speaking, I have to intern with him. So, thank you, sir. It was a very nice summary you did. So, Rajivji, Vijayaji, and Professor Vaidyanathan, I'm very happy that we are having this discussion on this book today. This is an opportunity to discuss the thoughts contained in the book, Snakes in the Ganga, which is not only useful for general public to understand, but I found lots of nuggets of stuff which I never connected. So there are 5 areas in which this book is very, very important, and we all need to understand that. First, we all understand what's happening inside the country. We are able to analyze what's going on. We know there is a tukde gang at work somewhere. We know that there are others trying to spin fake narratives out of minor incidents. But, I mean, anything good that the government or anything does will be shown as something that is bad. I mean, Tejasvi mentioned that you're not rooted in this country. You don't know what solutions will work here, but you will just import something from this thing. I'll give you 2 simple examples before I talk a little about the book. I mean, we had the pandemic, okay? The whole world and the dog at the lamppost said that you must pour billions of rupees in the hands of people when there was no supply there. Supply was not there, they said create demand. This is global economics, Nobel Prize winning economics, okay? But Mr. Modi did a simple common sense thing. He said the most important thing people need when they go back home is that they should be fed and not go hungry, right? He made sure that 5 kgs of food grain was available to everyone, 80 crore people. Now, that is what kept us away from poverty. And guess what? At the end of the pandemic, what has happened? The world which followed this Nobel Prize winning economic stupidity is having inflation rates higher than us. So what we are actually done is, I mean, in last 40 years, I have not seen Indian inflation lower than American or European this thing, right? But here, we followed common sense economics and we have got our inflation down far below world levels. Which just shows what you can achieve by doing sensible things rather than by following our own understanding of our culture, what our people need, better than this thing. Same thing happened with the COVID vaccine. I mean, they tried to push that $20 Pfizer on us, said give us indemnity, give us this, give us that, or else this thing. But we did what we have to do. We got our own vaccines developed, delivered more than 2.2 billion vaccines, unheard of feat in the world. We protected our people. And the reason that most of us are not masked today is because we did what we had to do and we have got it done. And yet, the narrative in the Western media is that India has failed magnificently, they have gloriously failed, they have unreported deaths, they have done this, they have done that, everything about what we did went wrong. Okay, so I start with this idea about fake narrative largely because the global consensus decides what is the narrative before finding out the truth, right? So this is the problem. They will run all over the place saying this is fake news, that is fake news because somebody has morphed some picture. But they will not bother about fake narratives. Fake narratives are what we need to kill, not fake news can be detected by technology. If somebody has mocked a picture, you can easily find it out in 5 seconds. Google has an algorithm that can find it out. You don't need thousands of fact checkers to check fake news. But even 1 million fact checkers cannot get rid of fake narratives because they are being manufactured in mass scale at the Ivy League institutions which we tend to revere. That is one key thing I have learned independent of that. So the first thing we need to learn is that what happens here and what happens abroad has a very strong line connecting both these things. These books help you. I knew what is happening here, but I didn't know what was the intellectual focus outside that was enabling this and feeding this breaking India force, We don't understand. We think that it is just some local fellows, opposition guys going to get around and create trouble. But they are getting their sustenance and their intellectual inputs from people abroad. So that's the most important thing, that you're able to, we are not just sitting in our own well and saying, okay, this is what's happening here, but it's very closely connected with what's happening in the Harvard and other institutions. So this book helps you make the connection between what's happening there and the ideological front and what is being implemented here by their sepoys and hewers of wood or whatever it is. Second thing, the funny thing is, everybody knows that Marxism has been discredited. We know what Stalin, Mao and Pol Pot did. They murdered their own citizens by the million. Okay? So Marxism has become a bad word. Unfortunately, Marxism is now very much alive and kicking in the US. It's a new Marxism which is not called Marxism, it is called critical race theory. So they're using this thing by converting M equal to CRT, they have actually reintroduced Marxism through the back door and we are not aware of it. So this is one critical thing that the book very clearly examines and tries to bring to the fore. And of course, there is a stupid straightaway extrapolation from critical race theory to critical caste theory. The last 7-8 years, if you actually notice, castes are actually coming together rather than growing apart. But the narrative abroad is to see that they stay apart. And I mean, there's nobody more who has done more for this than somebody who's come from a humble tea selling background to the Prime Minister's office. You know that people can rise if they have competence. And that is what has brought all the people together, because they know that this system may not be loaded against us. But the Harvard fellows will tell you that system is still loaded against you. You have to go and thrash the system and finish it off. This is the problem. Third thing, how important a role well-funded academic institutions play in creating these new ideas and how they get transmitted into broader movements which are often disruptive and damaging to the societies. Okay? This is actually new colonialism at work. The new bearer of the white man's burden. I mean, Kipling wrote about the white man's burden. The English sanitized their rule by claiming that we are here to civilize these brown buggers who are terrible. They need to be taught not to do this, not to do that. They have thuggy, they have sati, they have all kinds of bad things. So we are here to civilize them. So in order to justify their rule, they created this. Now what is happening is that the white man's burden has shifted to Harvard and the Ivy League. These institutions seem to have built private tentacles into all our things. Today there are privately funded institutes in India which have very close connections with the Ivy League. And this means the poison is seeping in. It's not snakes in the Ganga. It's snakes in the Potomac and Harvard and Cambridge that are actually here. And there are snakes in the Kauvery too. So we have to worry about that. So we need to consider all these things, but it's coming from there. So two other points that worth making before we go to the thing. The importance of media, which we always tend to underestimate. The disseminator of a core idea to a mass level is done through mass media and various kinds of media. The level of control and influence that these academic institutions have on media output, not just in their own countries, but even in India, is astonishing and scary. I didn't know this, but though I could see it from, I worked in a small place called Swarajya where we depend on a certain kind of funding. But we found huge amounts, 20 times the amount that we ever could raise from anybody, going to leftist publications that are out to demonize India, Hindus, whatever it is. This is the problem. And this too is directly the result of Harvard controlling the media. And media is being used to recolonize us, and that is what is there. So people like Swarajya and other publications, and of course Infinity Foundation and others who have their own, developed their own video channels and media to talk directly to the people, are the only counters we have. This needs to become a mass movement to counter this nonsense. The other thing I've often worried about is why are our businessmen so schizophrenic? Okay, in their private lives, they are conservative, they are God-fearing. They are not. Of course, we are not God-fearing. We are a God-loving nation. The God-fearing is unfortunately a colonial idea which we borrowed. We are not God-fearing. We don't fear any of our gods. We love them. Huh? We carry them with us wherever we go. But the point is, they are the people who do puja. They do all the things necessary. They follow vastu, whatever it is. But they are spending billions or millions of dollars to fund woke ideas that will destroy their own core beliefs. So we need to understand what is this schizophrenia in Indian business, who actually have become the high value sepoys of this new colonialism that is coming from these big institutions abroad. They are funding our own destruction, and we need to have engaged with this business. It's not that they're doing anything out of any malice towards this country. They want this country to succeed to as much, because if we don't succeed, they cannot succeed. We need this country to grow rich and powerful, and that's exactly what it is. But for some reason, there is some kind of assumption that we cannot talk back to the white man and tell him that, look, this is the way it needs to be. You know, China, for example, gets its own way. It's run the most autocratic regime in the world. You know, it's harassing its own people and making them suffer. But they get a very good press. And we don't do any such thing. And we get the bad press. So I think we are not, our businessmen need to be engaged so that they can at some point tell them that, look, we are not giving you money to demonize us and to finish us. Because if we are finished, there is nothing else left for you to gloat over. That's the ultimate lesson. And the last chapter in this book is particularly important to read, because ultimately what is happening is all this wokeism will actually end up transferring power even more so. I think Tejasvi talked about the power of tech. That's exactly what will happen. Because if all of us are going to be just coolies at the bottom end of the thing, and except for a few people at the top who might be doing cyber security or writing algorithms or doing machine learning or AI. So AI is going to come and control the top, and all of us are going to be like morons, just doing whatever the algorithm says we must do. And this is dangerous, which means this wokeism might ultimately end up making the extraordinary tech giants even more powerful than they already are. Not just tech giants, any kind of business. So this is the most dangerous thing, which he brings it up in the last chapter. But I think we need to worry about that. So I think this book is a very good starting point. But more than just all of us, we understand the danger because we are not infected by the disease of wokeism. At least I hope not. But the thing is, our civil servants, our politicians, our businessmen, the power structure, okay, and our academies, they unfortunately are finding ways to be the coolies of the Western institutions, whether it is business or whether why they are doing it is what we need to understand, and we need to strive fixing that. So with that small summary and all that, I would like to conclude my short address. I hope all of you get to read the book. Those of you can buy it, well and good. It's a big hefty thing. It's also good. It'll keep your weight down. But but otherwise, I think it's weighty also in the intellectual content of it, and very well researched. Many things I did not know about. If you see my copy of it, it is full of post-it pads on every third page because I will noted down points. So please do read it, and I hope the remaining part of the discussion is as enlightening. And thank you, Tejasvi, for coming here. It was really fantastic. I hope you continue fighting for dharmic causes wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Jagannathan ji, for that erudite talk. Dr. R Vaidyanathan is a retired professor of finance at IIM Bangalore. He was named one of the 10 best professors at all IIMs by Business Today. He is also a well-known author, and some of his best-selling books include Black Money and Tax Havens, Caste as Social Capital, which have all been well received and referred to by policy experts. He is currently an adjunct professor of Oro University, Surat, and Cho S. Ramaswamy Chair Public Policy at Shastra University. I kindly request Professor R Vaidyanathan ji to address the gathering.
Thank you, Divyaji, for the kind introduction. Thanks to the authors who are sitting as well as to Jagannathan. And the initial remarks by Surya, I thank very much. Now this book is about, Breaking India 2, it says. Earlier there was a book, Breaking India 1. Most of you would be aware of it. If I recall, it was in the 80s. I was in UK and I visited a large church. Huge church. It can accommodate easily some 1,500 people on a Sunday morning. Believe me, there were 7 people or 8 people. I was the 8th person perhaps, sitting in the front row. I had the benefit of that. The man was fire and brimstone, and at the end of it, that day it appears it was a bishop. At the end of it, he came to me and patted and, where are you from? I told, I am from India. He told, oh, you are all in darkness. And I told, yes, massive power cuts, but hopefully we will improve. In the sense, some whole situation has to improve, and that time I am talking about. And this conversation went on between us like this. He went on about darkness, I went on about problems of producing power. Basically, idea was to change India in the mirror image of what he thinks is a correct thing or a good thing or something. Some people also, some of my friends say that because of caste oppression, lot of these people have moved on to other religion. I asked them, in South Korea, was there a caste oppression? In Japan, was there a caste oppression? In Thailand, even in mainland China. Oh, that is only a ruse. The fundamental principle we have to recognize is, it is their dharma to change people. They must change. Nothing, you can't go on complaining. It is in their dharma to convert people. But now what has happened over a long period of time, it is taking too long a period of time. And people are asking a lot of questions, and all these things is taking place. So instead of wholesale converting people, much better to break this country. That is the current type of an idea. Breaking is much more easier and should be done. What has happened in the period is, G7, I am sure most of you would have heard about it, the white countries, they had 53% of the global GDP. Around 91, not very far away, something like 30 years before. Today they have got only 27% in purchasing power parity basis. Huge fall, and it is expected to become 20%. Take my word, G7 is gone. And declining powers are many a time more dangerous than rising powers. Declining powers are very dangerous. Because when they are sinking, they will try to drag you also along with you. And they are extraordinarily envious. Let me be very blunt about this country. First of all, 75 years they have managed here and there. And they are also growing. Slowly it is being recognized that incidentally, our growth rate is the highest among all the countries, not just developing countries or something. So the only way is to think of hitting them. One is, of course, if they can be used to facilitate their own intentions. Like for instance, whether India can be used to, as a cannon fodder for attacking China. This is, the standard operating procedure where they would like to use other countries for creating trouble. Like Ukraine is used for Russia, like India can be used. You should remember there is a famous saying by a British commander in the Second World War. Somebody asked him, will Britain win the war? He told, we will fight the German to the last Indian. So that is the type of a thing. So we are not seems to be enthusiastic, at least in the last couple of months. Some of our foreign minister's speech and other thing indicate that we would take our own stand, whether it is a court stand or whatever stand, we will take our stand. We will not try to be, because they look at the world as 0-1. Either it is black or it is white. But we don't look at the world like that. For us, there are multiplicity of shades in between, actually. And 0-1 means what? For instance, Iraq, so much was made. And New York Times wrote, Economist wrote, Iraq is full of chemical weapons and other things. They built up so much. And UN was pressurized, and finally Iraq was invaded. They couldn't find one bottle of hydrochloric acid. Forget about any chemical weapon or anything. It's in a mess today, that country. Very sad state of affair. Look at that, where it was. And so it's not in their interest not to look at it. 0. That's why you see in the press conferences or somewhere, are you here or are you there? It's not required for us to be here or there. It can be somewhere in between, nowhere also. That's also quite possible. So this is the situation today. So this book highlights the contemporary issues of breaking of India. This is something very, very interesting and very important actually. And we have huge amount of fault lines. On that there is no doubt about it. And many of us, we ourselves jump and create. And for instance, caste is a very major fault lines in India. Right? Caste, oppression. And I asked Marxist friends of mine, historians, do you have an example of a caste war in India in the last 2000 years? Did two castes, engage themselves in a big war? Any type of caste? They told, Professor, you are right, we don't have. How it is possible? 1500 years some oppression is taking place. How can they, you look at Europe, every 25 years there was an uprisal. So there is something, interesting and something missing in this whole discourse about this idea. Second is hierarchy, which they have also brought about, how the Harvard is pumping it. Prior to 1881, note my word, there is no written or any proof for hierarchy in Indian caste. 1881 was the first caste census undertaken by British government. They are the ones who made this hierarchy. I have asked several people, and some people of course tell about Purusha Sukta, and the Brahmins came from head and the Vaishyas came from, and Shudras came from feet. I told feet is not something bad actually. Feet is worshipped. If you go to Vaishnava temples, they keep one krita on your head. That's the feet of the Lord actually. So don't try to show me any other written material or written text. I'm talking about hierarchy, not the existence of caste. There is no answer. So there are several unanswered questions. Unasked for answers are plenty in India, of course. And this book highlights, most important is the snakes in the Ganges. I 100% agree. But I should tell our friend that there are Anaconda in Kauvery. Which is very, very important. And something drastic is brewing in the southern part of the country. I can tell you that much. Between today and next 3-4 years, you will see the southern part of the country is going to be in tremendous upheaval. There are so many type of dark and devious forces which are working on it, imaginary as well as various type of grievances in terms of victimhood, in terms of what one can call that we are all oppressed and suppressed, which is very, very peculiar. So the fault lines are getting exploited. We are not an inch even proud of several of. One is we never had slavery in our system. Nobody talks about it. I am very puzzled. Islamic civilization had slavery. Christian civilization had slavery. They all built their country based on slavery. We never had any slavery. The empires from south which went into up to Angkor Wat and Indonesia and other things, they never brought any slaves back. We never had any slavery. We had one stupid slave dynasty actually of the Mughal. And that is one paragraph will come in every history book, slave dynasty. So that's something very, very great. When I was in Atlanta, there was a lot of discussion about this women issues. Now these women issues have become too complicated actually. There are feminists and he has identified in the book, you should read something like 17 types of intersectional women people. There are women and there are feminists, there are radical feminists, atheist feminist, white feminist, black feminist, and then LGBTQ feminist, and so there was some old time, there was a seminar about, I quietly pointed out that when we got independence, we had this voting right for women without one sentence discussion in the Constituent Assembly. You had suffragette, you had fightings, you had Switzerland had as late as 1968 or something, women rights. For us it's natural, the sense there is nothing to talk about it, nothing to be gloating about it. But this is our basic issue. Currently our fault lines are being either introduced, innovated or magnified. Either way actually. And we normally go along with it. We like, as I call, we like the whites, right? Our umbilical cords are tied to the west. Let's be very clear about it. We say look east, but our face will only be looking west. West is very critical for us. The next auditorium, if a white man is giving a talk on economics, there will be more crowd there than IAM professor, no sir, he's a white man. Finally it will be found he is a plumber. But they will say, what if sir, he is a white plumber, that is most important, who is talking on Indian economics. So our genetically we are tied to the West, most important. Ideally it should be white. Otherwise what I call coconuts, that is outside brown, inside white. They can be, of course people like Rajiv are outside white and inside brown, that's a very interesting. I call him actually Modak, Modak you are familiar with, right? Outside white, inside brown, and sweet brown. That's why it's a very, very important thing. We love them actually. And whatever they say is for us ultimate. He has to say. He has to give. For instance, I will tell you a simple example. People introduce me as a retired professor, done this, done that, nobody is interested. Suddenly that speaker says, he is a Fulbright scholar. Then everybody said, something is there, this fellow. Right? It's a very... Incidentally, nowadays I don't say anything. I send it abroad and ask them to send it back. Because when they say only it will be accepted. We are tied genetically to the white. It's not very easy for us to cut off. Huge number of reasons could be there. Lot of children of senior people are settled there, and a lot of senior executives, senior bureaucrats, what I call the war veterans. War veteran means wisdom after retirement. That is the war veteran. They all write, pompous articles about what should be done in defense ministry when he was working there for 20 years. I don't understand. These people are all sold to the West. This book should be read by civil servant, compulsory reading. That is why I requested Rajiv whether he can bring out 100-page or 80-page type of a book. Because civil servants, I don't think, at the time of writing exam, they might have mugged up some of these things. Even that is nowadays is very, it's all, multiple choice. Tick one of them. India got independent 1936, 1952, 1963, none of the above. So tick, that's all. So this, and I also told him he can bring, he has got a lot of small videos, kindly look at it in the YouTube, and they can be merged, and this is a must read for defense people, civil servants, chartered accountants, lawyers, professors, all these groups must read it, along with the politician. Politician, of course, easy, maybe an exception. Telling them to read is, I may be charged under civil rights or something. Sir, this sir is asking us to read another thing. And Human Rights Commission may send a notice to me, why are you telling all these things? And so, reading and writing I cannot tell for political leaders, but they should also. And business people, last but not least. This is an extraordinarily important. The reason is very simple. We have to protect our interest, protect our civilization, protect our nation. And the next 10 years is going to be extraordinarily crucial. The reason is the G7 is going to decline below 20%. And already there is a huge amount of consternation in Europe. Some of you may be knowing about it. Sweden, for instance, one of the quote-unquote so-called extraordinarily liberal country, it has elected what is called by the TV channel extreme right. Same thing about Italy. And all of them are again refugees. Refugees is nothing but a code word for religion of peace. They call, they cannot call openly about this. So, refugees it's called. So, Europe is in a huge turmoil. And they are sitting on a, tender box, I would say. It's not going to be easy. Next will be France. The European project is over. I can assure you on that. After the, our ex-masters have left Europe. UK, I think you are aware of it. UK is no more with the, and sooner or later they would ask us to take over them and run the country, which I feel personally we should not be doing it. Right? They are going to ask us to provide loans or, various IMF type of a situation, another thing. UK is in very bad shape, actually. And so, and in case you are interested in seeing places, now do it. Yeah. Take a trip, a lot of these intermiles, that miles, this miles are available, right? And Pisa Tower and, those. So Europe is on and they have lost the will to fight. Europe cannot fight, I can assure you on that. The Belgium army average age is 42. The belt size is also 42. How can they fight? They cannot fight. I'm telling you, they want to go to beaches, they want to enjoy their music and beer and wine and other. That's all. So they will ask us, I'm telling you very seriously, 10 years or 5 years maybe, I may not be around, remember this, they will ask us. Because US cannot put their boots into Europe. Because every one single body bag coming into JFK, they lose something like, one of the professor colleague of mine told, every single body bag coming into JFK, we lose something like 100,000 votes. For them, one body bag is as good as for India some or Pakistan some 50 or 50,000 or 5,000 body bags. So US cannot send their soldiers to fight. US cannot sit and press buttons. That is another thing. In the case of Iraq, Iran, they can do. They can sit there and press buttons. I was worried actually. I was in US. I told my colleague I am worried because instead of Iraq, Iran, India, they should not press and send some missile. My colleague told, don't worry. All those who are pressing there are all Indians. So they are not going to press any buttons like that. Okay? I was happy to that extent. Right? So they cannot, because for the simple reason, Europe is full of white people also as of now. So if they press button, it will annihilate both the whites and the others. So it's going to be a big theatre of, and kindly note one important thing for people with the knowledge of history, last 2000 years, every war, every conflict in the world started from Europe. Not from Africa, not from Asia, no. But all over people were fighting. Right? World War they call it. It's a purely European war. England and Germany were fighting. Indians were dying in Singapore. This is something very common for them. All over the world people. Europe is always the origin of the war. So it's going to be very difficult. India has to make extraordinarily difficult choices, but India has to protect itself. That is what is the primary thing of the book. It has focused significantly on Harvard, among many other things. And the reason is very simple. The insidious and the type of developments which are being encouraged by Harvard is inimical to us. And the book has exhaustively covered about every individual industries who is funding various type of trust, various type of institutions and other things. Our business people, they provide funds. Without, there is for investment, they do due diligence, whether ROI is there or, but for these type of thing, it's something has come and something has, they are not, just like some of the media barons, they do not know what is being written by or what is being shown in the media. They have just funding it and some people are working there, let it go on. There is no due diligence there also. So, huge amount of, Yale played the same role during the British time. Actually, Yale was built because of Madras. Madras presidency was looted and Yale was built on that. And a similar type of a role, there are many universities, among them Harvard has been phenomenally highlighted, and it is an extraordinarily well-researched work. It's not because of the size, it's also because of internal. You have to read it carefully. It's not something like broad assertion or something. And some of them are eye-opening. I never knew about OMDR network. After reading that only I understood how much, and they have, by and large, whites have got a significant amount of infiltration in our bureaucracy, in our what one can call auditing, in our accounting spheres, in our decision making, phenomenal amount. Because as I told you, the white is extremely important. In India, some of these things are given. For instance, you must have a tie to tell a lie. That's a very standard type of thing. If you don't have a tie and you tell a lie, nobody will appreciate it. They will all laugh. But if you have a tie and then tell a lie, people will say, sorry, he's telling a. That's why the bankers, lawyers, accountants always have tie. Did you notice that? So, this is not going to be an ordinary battle. I can assure you on that. This is going to be a very major battle. And I can tell you again, South is going to be the biggest battle arena in this. And that's a very, thing which is being, getting exploited. And a lot of, simple thing like South is neglected, North is growing, all, I'll tell you one example before I complete. There was a freight equalization which was brought about in the 50s. Not many people are even aware of it today. The coal which comes out in in those days Bihar or Bengal, at the pit head, the same price it has to be sold in Chennai and Bangalore. Nowhere in the world this is there. All over the world you see, in Germany or US or other places, wherever there is these resources, there actually the industries developed. Coal belt had a huge amount of industry. India is a very interesting country where the coal belt or iron ore belt didn't have much industries. The industries were all deliberately started at Bangalore, Chennai and Hyderabad and other places. All your BHE, LB, ML, any number you take. I am talking about the 50s and 60s. None from UP, none from Bihar protested against it. There used to be one leader called Ram Manohar Lohiya. Some of you might have heard about him. He is the father of all these current, Mulayam Singh and Lalu Yadav and others. Anyhow, that time he was opposition leader. He was asked why South is given such a preference. He told, they are our brother, they are growing. What is there? India is growing. Do you have one leader today in our country who can answer like this? Think about it. My professor, of course, Ashok Mitra, he was the finance minister of West Bengal. He wrote extensively about it. But he was told by his own party, this is not a very major issue, don't focus on it. Right? So, if you ask me, actually, during the period of time, it is the South which was deliberately favored by the policies of Maharanabi, second 5-year plan, industrialization and other things. It's not the other way. But whole history is distorted, twisted, and a lot of lies are being spread that we are neglected, and they are not neglected. The point I want to stress is the coming battle of the snakes of the Ganges is going to be fought on the riverine of Kauvery. Believe me, and that is what is most important. We have to protect, and for a long period of time, South has been protected by the invaders of Mughals and various others by the sword arms of Punjab and Maharashtra and others. Now as the time has come for southern part of the country to be alert and provide its leadership and provide its maturity and provide ourselves against these snakes, anacondas in Kauvery. This is extremely important. I would strongly advise each of you to buy the book and don't go by the current fashion, which we are always very fond of. Suddenly in the 90s, everybody began to talk about AIDS. AIDS is coming, AIDS is coming. Couple of people got AIDS in US, so in India it became a big issue. Whole India is going to die because of AIDS. Fortunately, nothing like that happened. Then, this LGBTQ has come, and as if that is a very major. And whatever craze comes there, and here also it is immediately what one can call. And now it is the age of environment. Everybody is suddenly worried about environment. That 7th fail, 8th pass, or 8th fail, 7th pass, I do not know. That girl from Norway or some, she periodically comes out on TV and say, how dare, I don't know who dares. Anyhow, this is a very interesting thing. And this has become the current craze. You have to, so whatever is propagated, it's not 50s, I recall, my uncle brought one plastic bag. Nalli Chinnaswamy Setti gave a silk sari in that bag. And everybody was thrilled, and this is the first time. He says it cannot be, that it cannot be destroyed, another thing. My grandma in her native wisdom told him, anything which cannot be destroyed is dangerous to the earth. Everybody laughed at her. 58 or 59, everybody laughed at her. What is this Ajji? What is this old lady is blabbering? I am sure the scientists in Europe and UK would have known about it that time. Not that they were not aware of it or anything. And suddenly everybody is talking about environment, protecting forest. Millions of trees have been destroyed by these people for the last 300, 400 years to wipe their bottoms every day. Nobody questioned that. To clean themselves simply, whole of Europe and US has destroyed so much amount of forest. Did they again build a lot of them? No. But now they are making it appear that countries like India are culprits. You are to have larger responsibility. You have to, what do we do? You are the ones who imposed all this. The coal-based industry was developed by you only. I think we must sit back and able to tell them at their face that get lost. Very simple. It will take a lot of energy and time for us to do that. But sometime or other, somebody has to start doing this. It's not going to be a easy task. So I would only conclude that this book is a must. Must be bought. Of course, if it is my book, I will say buy. I won't say read, because that's not required for me to impose on you. If you buy, that's enough. But in this case, I will say read. Buy and read. Even if you don't buy, read it actually. It contains huge amount of information. It will shake you to the core actually. The type of threat which we are facing is something extremely critical for us to understand. It's not something which is to be brushed aside or anything. And I sincerely thank our Modak, Malhotra, MM and Vijaya for initiating this thing. This is not going to stop with this, I can assure you on this. Like the earlier Breaking India 1, which created significant amount of impact across the country. This will also have its own impact. And finally, as it used to be always told, ideas matter. All other things will follow. Good ideas matter, and army of people and various other things will follow. And this book also focuses on dangers of large businesses, technology, and basically what type of mechanisms are adopted to break us. Breaking us is not going to be a easy thing because first of all, we are not united to break at all. There is nothing, if you want to break something, it should be together, right? We are a bundle of sticks strewn around all. First of all, they have to collect all of it and make it into it will take a long time. It's not going to be easy to break us. We shouldn't be complacent, right? Like my grandfather says, our country will never have any future or problems for the simple reason, many people have this attitude, if Ram is ruling us or if Ravana is ruling us, it doesn't matter. Ramana, all are same. Don't worry about it, like that. So that I think is not going to be helpful to us anymore. We have to be alert. We have to be passionate about keeping our culture and civilization to pass it on to the next generation, to pass it on to the future. It's onus is on us to pass it on to the future. So thank you once again for highlighting the major fault lines issues and how others are exploiting it. And thank you all for your patient hearing.
So, if I were a school teacher, this is the first task I would give to the class after reading excerpts from the book. Yeah. Huh? Discuss in not more than 200 words any one of the following topics. India is mentally being recolonized. India is for sale. Critical caste theory and its applicability to India. Merit is not important anymore. Discuss. These are the topics that this book follows. And once you get into it, you will know that some of these topics are what we need to discuss as a country. And it's not just a class essay competition. And so, Rajiv, let me come first to you. All these questions are there. your analysis starts with critical race theory as the Trojan horse through which some kind of destructive Marxism is being introduced both in the US Academy and in India, right? Can you just quickly summarize the theory so that we can move on to the next questions relate from it?
Yes, I will summarize the critical race theory and the Marxist origins. But before that, I want to say one thing. Before you get scared of the size of the book, I want to tell you that you need to read about 50 to 75 pages. You read the introduction, and then every chapter has a one-page overview, like an executive summary. And it's written very carefully. After looking at the chapter in detail, what are the most important things you should get out of that chapter? And so it's a maybe 1.5 page summary. And so if you read all this, you will understand everything what the book is saying. But to read the proof, to prove it to yourself, the backup data, the references, that's when you need to read the detailed chapter. But if you accept what we are saying, and you just want to know what are they saying, then it's enough to read the introduction and the overview page of every chapter. And then whichever points you want to get into more details, you can read those chapters without having to read all them in sequence. So if you want to know about the attack on IITs, you read chapter 4. If you want to know what is Lakshmi Mittal and Family Institute doing at Harvard, then you read a certain chapter, like that. If you want to read, what is China, how are they different at Harvard, there's one chapter on that. So the chapters are written to be on one point at a time, and you can read them in any sequence. So in that sense, it's not like you have to read from cover to cover so many pages. I just wanted to say that. The Marxism, basically, I'll give you a little tutorial so you understand it. Marxism basically says that society consists of oppressed people and the oppressors. And so it looks for who is oppressed and who is the oppressor. And originally it used to be economic, only economic, people who were downtrodden and those who were the people who controlled the economy. They did not talk about race, and Marx did not talk about religion as factors. It was only economic class struggle. Later, during World War II, there was a second wave of Marxism in which they expanded the theory. And then after that World War II was over, many Marxists came to the United States, particularly Berkeley and Columbia, and then they created a new idea of Marxism where they applied it to blacks and whites, races. And this remained kind of in the academic cocoon for several decades. And then more recently, this critical race theory emerged. So now critical race theory basically says that the blacks being oppressed by whites cannot be cured by individual white being a nice guy. If an individual white says, I haven't oppressed anybody, I have a lot of black friends, I give equal job opportunities in my company, even if it is like that, the theory says that being born as a white is itself a privilege because there are structures over many generations that these structures privilege the white people. So whether you personally are good or bad is irrelevant. The fact that you are white means that you're already guilty. You're guilty by birth. It's almost like you're guilty by birth because by being born in a certain structure, you're getting entitlement to those privileges. So therefore, the structures have to be demolished. And demolishing those structures means that you have to create a counter-revolution. You have to create a narrative which is a counter-narrative. And you are allowed to do it with lies. You're allowed to do it with the cancel culture. You stop those guys from responding. You deny them their rights. And so as long as you're fighting the dominant narrative with a counter-narrative, you're allowed to do whatever is necessary, whatever means are necessary. So it's a kind of a call to violence, you might say. It's certainly a call to conflict. And this is what critical race theory has become. Now the oppressed are not only blacks, but also minority religions, also LGBTQ. Any group that has a grievance says we are oppressed, they're all clubbed together as the kind of collective oppressed, and they have to fight the oppressor. So now a very good market they got is India. That because there are so many Indians, it's not that Harvard imposed it on India, but Indian people looking for help went abroad and said, just like one Raja would go to the East India Company and say, help me fight the other Raja. It is the Raja who empowered the British. If the Rajas were together, the British had no business to do anything. It is same way. It is Dalit activists, it is minority religion activists who go to places like Harvard, they welcome there, they go there saying, please help me against the other fellow. And the Harvard people say, oh, you know, these guys are oppressed, I have to help them. So this business of Harvard and others like them intervening in India is a result of Indians wanting this happen because they become useful to the Harvard people. They become sepoys. It's a career opportunity. So this divisiveness is being initiated and fed by our own people who have these kind of selfish desires.
So, Vijaya, one thing, the book documents the level of infiltration of such ideas which are disruptive, dangerous, and probably destructive too, into several kinds of institutions. One is, of course, academic institutions, and second is, of course, media, and the third is, you also say that civil servants and judiciary. Can you just expand on these things, how they are doing this?
So essentially, academics, we have opened the floodgates for liberal arts institutions without even figuring out what it entails. It's just cool to say credits can be transferred, institutions are all the same, we're going to follow the US model. In fact, if you study the US model of higher education, it's crumbling. You know, student loan is at all-time high, and students that go through liberal arts curriculum for 4 years and paying $70,000 a year for 4 years are actually not finding jobs. So this has to be studied. Is that a good model to first of all copy and bring it on? So academics is a huge area. Now, in this book, we've hardly put 25 to 30% of what our findings were. And we've chosen Harvard as an example of a seat of power. And so when you have a seat of power like Harvard, it permeates everywhere. So there are think tanks, there are revolving doors between think tanks and Harvard. There is, for example, the Chinese, the open-air prisons for Uyghur Muslims. The two CCP apparatchiks who managed this and expanded this are actually selected and trained by the Kennedy School and sent back, and this is the work they're doing. It's just not an academic institution. It's built a brand through which it has far-reaching, the tentacles into all kinds of institutions of power. So the World Bank, the WEF, and this is also an area that we should look at. Career diplomats and election commissioners, people like that, bureaucrats at very, very high levels. Once they retire, they become a fellow at the Kennedy School. Now that gives access into the infrastructure of government. How do you penetrate it? So Ashoka University essentially has been mining electoral data, for example, with the help of an ex-election commissioner on the board. It doesn't take too much to figure out why these things happen. So I think this is a seat of power, and with that, you can penetrate essentially any institution, not necessarily only academic institutions.
So Rajiv, I just wanted to look at the intersection between critical race theory and caste theory, okay? A simple number actually gives me how do they do this, because in the USA, you can say over 2/3 of the population is white and the black population is just about 8 or 9% or 10%. And so the structure of oppression is possible because the numbers there are large. Here you're talking about Brahminism sort of enslaving 98%. There are 2% of guys. Okay, and you're saying this 2% is enslaving the remaining 98%, and especially the 25% that is Dalits and tribes and things like that. Don't these numbers themselves tell you out of common sense that this kind of translation of a race theory into a caste theory is bogus?
Actually, there are many flaws in this theory that we've documented. For example, if you look at the history of white-black racism in America, the whites brought the blacks from another continent as slaves. Then the equivalent thing, if they are saying that the Dalits are like the blacks and the Brahmins are like the whites, then it would have to be that the Dalits were brought from some other continent as slaves by the Brahmins who were ruling. There's no such thing that happened. Both these communities have been native only. So it's not like one comes from another country. Also, when they say that the white-black should apply, the whites were in power, controlling. Now they apply this to minority religions in India. They are saying that under critical caste theory, the caste now expands to include other minorities because they are also oppressed. But the point is that the two minority religions were the conquerors who came and ruled. So the equivalent thing would be if the blacks had come from another country, invaded the whites and ruled over them for hundreds of years, and then it would be a similar situation. So the situation is exactly the opposite. It is historically, it is not the case. You cannot take the history of whites' relationship with the blacks and apply it to the relationship of the Hindu majority vis-a-vis the minority faiths. So, the logic doesn't cut it. But what has happened is most Americans are ignorant. They don't have time for all this. And they believe in the brand value of who's credible. So Vaidyanathan goes and Jaggi goes and Vijaya goes and I go. We are ordinary people. But then some big professor, Tarun Khanna of Harvard University, Lakshmi Mittal, Center for South Asia Studies director, former big shot at Kennedy School, all these credentials, okay, then it carries weight. So they are using the brand value for credibility, and especially when people don't have the details, don't have the time to read much, they don't have the brains or the interest to look at the logic. They'll follow what is well known. They will say, well, everybody says this must be true. Now, why are you making trouble? You must be a conspiracy theorist. So we have a very difficult job, fight uphill battle. And also on top of it, those people got resources, they got money, they throw things around, they throw money around, they can hire people, they can have a big conference in which they'll invite only the people they want. And they'll fly them first class and they look after them because they have unlimited money. So they can create this discourse. And they have the money to put it through the media. And then, you see, Harvard is training, the Kennedy School trains the who's who of American political elite. Many of them are from that background, and the senators have interns, senators have staffers, they're entitled to a certain number of staff positions, the congressmen and senators, and a normal thing is to do somebody who's come from international relations background from an Ivy League. So these people penetrate the whole establishment in Washington. They are in think tanks, this Carnegie and all these kind of things, and Brookings and all that. And so the output of Harvard is not only university. It's a trainer of think tanks. It's a trainer of people running church seminaries. It's a trainer of people running the Congress and the Senate. So it's a kind of, you may think of it, in practice, they are like the Vishwaguru. We are not the Vishwaguru because India does not even control its own narrative. Forget exporting the narrative to the world, we do not even control our own narrative. We get it from Harvard. So that's the extent of the power asymmetry.
So Vijaya, these guys want to dismantle us, saying that we are some kind of hierarchical rogues trying to ruin everybody else's lives, right? But the real people who actually need to be dismantled is the Harvard ecosystem, which is actually got its tentacles all over the world. So, while Americans have just now started talking about breaking up large tech companies like, say, an Amazon or a Google, there are some bills making their way through Congress. But why is it that nobody has talked about an antitrust legislation against this intellectual cartel that is at the core of Harvard? Do you believe that needs to be dismantled?
Yeah, for people, for all the talk of power structures and oppression, it's an irony because the Harvard type institutions and the Ivy League institutions are themselves power mongering institutions. Now, there has been a backlash in the US also. So that is something we need to keep an eye on, because there are many professors and people who are against critical race theory who have been cancelled. And so they've gotten together and started their own institutions, have essentially said, we're not going to be part of this cancel culture, because they just think academic ethics call for sort of more open free speech. So essentially, we are beginning to see that, but I think India's gone reverse by again importing what is the worst of American academia into India. We should really evaluate, is this really good for us? Because in America, it's not working for America, let alone this working for India.
So Rajiv, you have gone ahead and named a lot of names, not just institutions, but individuals, which include media entities, which include NGOs or as alleged NGOs, who seem to want to do everything except their own job, and names both in the US and in India, right? Now, are you taking a huge risk, or do you need Z category security from now on?
So, unless you name names, in abstraction, it doesn't make the same impact. Because you can talk in theory, a lot of people say there is colonialism, there is this and that, but you got to name exactly, then you are, you see, if I name, then I have to prove, and I'm happy to prove with actual citation. And then I'm being more honest, because I'm inviting the other side to take my evidence and say it's wrong. Tell me why it's wrong. Prove it wrong. In other words, I'm naming you, and you are a mighty industrialist with a lot more power than I have. I'm naming you and saying, I'm naming some Indian billionaires several hundred times, not like once or twice. But we are naming them hundreds of times. And we are doing it with full evidence. And so, we are open to discussion. If we are wrong, we'll retract. But we want them to come and say, okay, this is their point of view. So naming is also non-ignorable. If you don't name, then they can ignore you. They can say it's not about me, maybe it's about this fellow and that one. But if you name this guy and name him many, many times, and they're highly public figures, they have to notice it. And we want an amicable discussion. We're not looking for, we're not insulting them, by the way. Naming them doesn't mean we're calling them anything crooks or criminals, or we are saying that they are funding wokeism, which has these implications. And they can say, okay, I'm funding it because I believe in it. And that's the end of the story. At least they'll come out and clarify. Or they could say, I'm funding it but I didn't know that there's anything wrong, in which case, please thank us because we're informing you. Or they can say, we are funding it and we have no control because even though we know it's not good for our country, but Harvard is so powerful, then we'll say, what do you mean? Well, that's utter nonsense. You would never fund a factory with this kind of without blindly, if it's creating poison, or if it's creating danger for the factory workers or dangerous product, you would resign. You would get out of a venture if it is, once it is shown that it is causing some harm. So even if you didn't know it, now we're telling you. So I think we are very open as to why they're doing it, and we are very open to the outcome, but we would like to start a conversation. Now, if that is the spirit in which we are doing it, we hope it is not dangerous to us, but it is possible that it might be, because it's not only the industrialists. There are some people who may be of a certain jati, and they may think that we have hurt them, or some minority group, and they may decide to come after us, or Harvard may decide. And these big people, if they are so proud, they may send somebody else to do it. Certainly trying to undermine our credibility. They're going to attack us in social media. I've been attacked so many times, and I'm expecting that. So it is for people like you to support us, give us moral support. The Kshatriya goes out and fights for his side. And when he's hit, then the side has to say, okay, he is fighting for us. He gave up everything, he's fighting for us, and he's taking the risk, he's investing everything he has. At the very least, we can support him. So how you can support, one of the ways you can support is get this book, because if this book is popular, if it is a lot of people buying it, send it as Diwali gift. It will be a moral support to us. It is the least you can do, because then it sends a message. And we are not as easy to attack because you are behind us. It is easier to attack a person who is isolated, who's alone, who has no support, who's standing there on his own. It is a very tempting target. Go after him because nobody will come and save him. But if it is known that large number of people, that is why we are doing so many of these events, large number of people in various Indian cities are backing these people, then we are protected. So this is why we launched the book here, to create the traction, to create the awareness in the media, the coverage in the media, that this has been very successfully received, so that by the time we go back to the US, and we're going to launch it again in Canada, United States, and then in February we're coming again to India for a second round. The reason we're working so hard, after working hard to produce the book, we're working so hard to popularize the book, and we want your help, is basically it will protect us and it will also spread knowledge. So this is the least you guys can do, and we would be very happy.
Yeah. So, Professor Vaidyanathan, one question specifically to you, okay? Huh? No, you, yeah. One thing is, what explains the schizophrenia of Indian businessmen who are in their private lives pretty dharmic? Every business that I work for, or a media house, they will do puja before something, they will do vastu stuff, then they will do things only on auspicious days, they will launch a new publication. And I've seen the same thing happen in businesses that are non-media, right? But the same fellows want to give millions of dollars to dismantle the same dharmic structure back home. How it explains this schizophrenia?
I would not call it schizophrenia. You see, our business people are business minded when it comes to business. Very simple. In terms of due diligence, in terms of evaluation, and but other parts of it, they are not very serious or anything. They don't. They won't mind giving couple of lakhs without doing any due diligence or something, because some influential people approached them. Another. That is one thing. Second is, as far as US universities are concerned, they are enamored by it actually. Let's be very clear about it. Two things. One is most of their children cannot get into IIT, IIM through the competitive route. So they have to go through what one may loosely call paid seat, as it is called. And paid seat is commonly known even here in engineering and other education. And that's very expensive today. I'm sure they will agree with me. It's not like olden days of 60s and 70s. Today it is very, very prohibitively costly. One is they do get, for instance, if you give X amount of donation in some US universities, I know, where the business person can sponsor candidate, 3 to 4 of them, for the next 5 to 6 years. And their friends, relatives, and people who can never aspire to, never think of getting into any university, they can also get into universities. In the olden days, they used to, there is a famous joke about it actually. Our Indian Institute of Management at Bannerghatta Road, we have a huge driveway, and we have also a huge, what one can call, portal, where people stop and come. Some of the people come inside and come out, and then they advertise, we passed through the portals of IIM Bangalore and other things. And like that, the Harvard or Stanford thing, they gives enormous amount of importance to them. And then some of them offer these big businessmen some honorary thing. They are called some chairman or something, and then meetings are held, and the white man shakes hand. That's most important thing, right? This is the very, very, and of course in between during the COVID, that was not very much encouraged, but otherwise they used to do this. And otherwise, so there is a, let's be very clear, fascination for. They are not doing it in this side of the world actually, in Philippines or in Thailand or some of those type of countries. Australia sometime, but primarily it is in US. and that get fairly, and some of them say they are got educated in Stanford. Kindly distinguish between being educated in a place and graduated from that place. That's a lot of different. After 2 3 years you get out, then you can still be educated. And according to me, that is also not correct, because some of them can never be educated. That is a very complicated thing. I know some major businessman in India who is just educated. He never graduated from there. So this fascination is there, like this fascination is there not only among business people, bureaucrats, ministers, So many bureaucrats say they have attended this AM Advanced Management Program in Harvard. That's a title which you are supposed to, that is sponsored by the government. They go there and attend the and they see also a lot of other participants from various other countries. Right? I have had one of two of them. One African student actually. And I'm not insulting Africa or anything, but this particular student of mine was somehow we all professors, struggled hard and graduated. Because he was not very. The most fascinating thing is, after a couple of years in Ashoka Hotel, there was some big Afro-Asian meet or something like that. He was the son of a rebel leader who has captured power. So he has become a minister, finance minister. He came. And after the thing, he came, and that time there was no this email and all those things. He has actually sent me a letter which came much later. He hugged me, another thing. I should tell you that also. He was very happy about it. And only thing is, he had some 80 strong, along with his father, delegation in Ashoka Hotel in Bangalore. I asked him, you are a poor country, how come, so many are here with you? He revealed me a top secret. Professor, they are all dissidents, opponents to my father. Unless we bring them here, by the time we reach home, there will be a coup. So we don't want to. So I was extraordinarily happy about India too. Whenever our PMs go, they don't take all the opposition leaders and military leaders. The point I want to say is, lot of these are very, very interesting thing about their behavior. Let me tell you, CIA and others used to sponsor students of many of these countries, wherever these rebels were there or active, in the universities, primary universities in US actually. We only talk city here and talk about quality, and they are not very, and some of them fail students so that they continue to be basketball player in their undergraduate. They deliberately keep them under that. So this joy of being fettered by white man is there, and our businessman, if they can acquire it by paying some, couple of lakhs of dollar, he would not mind it. I'll tell you, I can now tell, in the 70s, one of the southern business groups got one trust made in order to educate people abroad. That business group's one of the girls went abroad to study based on the funds of the trust. And after that, the trust got closed. Only one person, I used to meet that person sometimes. I used to say, you are the only one who benefited out of foreign education by the, and they also had a tax benefit and other things. All these,
Yeah, okay. Right. Vijaya, what do you think that, see, many of the key people who are spreading this new caste theory and all that, people like Ajanta Subramaniam, then Suraj Yengde, and then Tenmuri Soundararajan and all that, don't they, don't they know that in some ways they are being used against their own country, or are they willing participants? How exactly do they see themselves? Do they really think that at the end of it, assuming all that they wish for, the destruction of every aspect of this civilization, if it comes true, how is it going to benefit them, or for that matter, their sponsors?
So, if you look at Suraj Yengde, the things that he proposes for the Dalit movement, actually doesn't do anything for the Dalit people as such. If you want true Dalit empowerment, you would work very hard, ensuring that they have access, that they have support. But Suraj Yengde doesn't want that. Yengde wants the standards to be lowered or not to have standards at all for entrance. He wants meritocracy to be totally destroyed. So these are people that are actually not working for the people they represent. And some of the true Dalit leaders who care about Dalit issues are not celebrated at Harvard either. So if you have a Muslim minority who is speaking about Hindu nationalism, that person is cancelled. So these are people that have an agenda because they are propped up. If you look at someone like Yengde and his scholarship even, he's just propped up as the Dalit poster boy. And of course, we also prop him up here. If you look at Yengde's tours in India, he writes, like Rajiv ji said, writes op-eds on Indian Express. He's often found with other leaders like T.M. Krishna. So he gets a lot of visibility. There are many Dalit leaders who are truly fighting for Dalit causes, for Dalit empowerment, that you do not see. So there is that as well. And it is actually very, very sad that for the most impoverished, marginalized people, these people are actually being an obstacle for their empowerment. Because we are all distracted trying to fight these off, and the really marginalized people, we are not able to give them upliftment. So this is actually another big problem, because these people are hijacking the real Dalit cause.
So Rajiv, can you speak a little about how Harvard is handling us, but in the case of China, China is handling Harvard. So they are able to get their angles exactly. Harvard is willing to sing and dance if they are playing the tune. But in our case, they expect us to kowtow to them. And how are we playing it wrong, and how is China playing it right? And is that the way of what we need to do?
That's a great question discussed at length in this book. China, first of all, has a strategy on China studies from the government level. And then when they go to a particular place like Harvard, they already have a strategy. The Indian government does not have a strategy on India studies. Indian government does not have a strategy of India studies even in India. So if there's no strategy for India studies in India, how are we going to export it to another country? This would require a whole revamping of HRD to have a strategy on India studies, and combined with Culture Ministry, combined with Ministry of External Affairs, and then they would have a strategy, India would have a strategy for India studies overseas, and then we could combine with industrialists and say, okay, you take our strategy, you give the money, and we have the strategy, we work together. So the Chinese having a strategy on China studies, and then collaborating with their industrialists, their billionaires, therefore it's a coordinated effort. That's one very big difference. This is accompanied by a fairly heavy-handed approach towards what they call a black list of people and a white list of people. White-listed are those American scholars who are writing in favor of China and who are towing the line of what the China wants their narrative to be, which means you don't talk about the Uyghur Muslims, you don't talk about the Tibetan problem in Tibet that they're having, you don't talk about the Hong Kong riots and revolt and for freedom, you don't talk about lack of democracy, you don't talk about all the problems that they're having in social justice and so on. So if you don't do all that, you are whitelisted, which means you're a good guy and they'll welcome you. And if you do these things, you're blacklisted and you won't get a visa, for example. So if you are a professor of China studies, your career depends on being able to have access to data, being able to make field trips, and being able to get articles published in journals. Since the journals of China studies are controlled by the Chinese, and the journals of India studies are not controlled by Indians, they're controlled from foreign countries. Our people are obliged to the British and the Americans to get their papers published. The Indian who is studying various things in India, his ultimate success is that some paper, some publishing house or journal or conference in overseas invited him, and it's a good thappa stamp for him back home. So, they are obviously controlling the careers. Whereas in the case of China, the China studies is controlled. The most prestigious journals on China studies are from China and in Mandarin. And the most prestigious conferences on China studies are in China. So the Americans and British and all these Europeans have to go to get their career ahead, and therefore they want to be whitelisted and not blacklisted. So all this is very coordinated. They have a strategy, we don't have a strategy. Then the other thing is that most of their students are STEM education, in science, technology, medicine, engineering, these kind of things. They are not sending students for human rights and to study Chinese history in Harvard, or to study, Chinese social justice problem or those kind of things. Whereas here, there is no strategy. You can go for STEM, or you can go to study Indian history at Harvard, as if Harvard should tell you about Indian history. A lot of people are studying things like, you go to Harvard and write a PhD on Ambedkar. Why are you studying Harvard? To write a PhD on Ambedkar. Or you go there and to write some theory about caste and all that, you write over there. And that's got a lot of prestige value. And then you come back, some university here will hire you because they think that you must be very good. So we don't have a strategy. We don't have anything coordinated. We don't have even India studies in India under our control. We don't have a conference on India studies. We have a lot of manthans and a lot of, I'm not talking about those kind of, that is activism, that's not scholarship. That is activism. Now, we as a foundation have started good, solid, conferences called Swadeshi Indology. To bring this kind of level of standard, we published 7, 8 volumes of proceedings, which are all very solid papers. You can get them. But that's just a private initiative by us. There's no effort on the part of the government or anybody big, to throw their weight around behind it. So the differences are many. And at the end of the day, the Chinese who go to America are very patriotic. More than 95% go back. It's not like they go and stay there. They come back. They go back to China. The number that kind of stay there is small by comparison. So all these things are very different. Indians also have another problem, that the tendency of an Indian is to not be cohesive together with each other. One of the findings we got as a result of all our research, I was asking people, what is the difference in behavior of Indians towards each other versus Chinese towards each other? And one student gave a very important remark and said that in certain courses in US, the students have to evaluate each other. Not just professor, peer review. The peers review each other. And so when an Indian makes the paper, or presents the paper for peer review, the other Indians will criticize, knock him down. When the Chinese does it, all the other Chinese will give him very high marks. So they believe that we are a community, we'll support each other. And the Indian is very interested in bringing him down. I'll give you an personal example. This is not in the academic world, but the same example works. When we had a very India-friendly governor in New Jersey, some years ago, decades ago, his name was Governor Jim McGreevey. He was really pro-India. And he had a Ganesh statue outside, and he was a Hindu. He had some Hindu kind of experiences. So he appointed a commission called Asian Commission. And I was one of the commissioners appointed. And they wanted to know what each of you want to do. So I said my favorite project would be that we should have Asian studies in the universities in New Jersey and in schools. Okay, because too much European emphasis, not enough Asian. So I was made commissioner of the Asian studies. Now they had one Vietnamese on it, one Chinese, one Japanese, one Korean, one Pakistani, one Nepali, a couple of us Indians like that. All over Asia were represented. I was the chair, and we were developing Asian studies. So I convinced all the other Asian commissioners that we should come up with what is unifying Asia and what is good about Asia. So one topic would be the spread of Buddhism across Asia very peacefully, as opposed to the spread of European culture with violence. And the Japanese liked it, the Chinese liked it, the Korean liked it, all these guys liked it. Pakistan is quiet, but he didn't mind. They also went along with it. So like this, we had a couple of, and then I said another thing about Asia is that this freedom movement of India decolonize the world. The freedom movement of India being so powerful that when they lost India, they had to give freedom to everybody. The whole colonial structure, not only British, but French and Dutch, and dismantled because India was so strong. So we changed world history. And then I wanted to say that so much Asian knowledge, Chinese printing press, Chinese gunpowder, Chinese silk, and Indian mathematics and Indian metallurgy, I gave a list of all that. You know, the Asians loved it. We had some meetings in the state official state building, in the mansion of the governor sometimes. I invited them to my house. Sometimes the Chinese would invite. There was a lot of brotherhood and fraternity among the Asians. When we produced this final paper, you know who opposed it? Two Indians. One of them stood up and to make a speech in front of everybody and said, "Why aren't you writing about the oppression of Dalits here, sir?" I said, we are talking about what's great about our culture because that's how they teach about Europe. When they teach about French history, they talk about wine, French wine and French fashions, and they talk about the French greatness of whatever they did. They don't talk about French oppression of Africans. They don't talk about their dirty linen. Because when you're teaching American young students about some foreign culture, you don't want to introduce them with all the atrocities. That may come later when later in life they're strong. But you want to introduce the beauty of these cultures. And that's how all the cultures are treating each other. And why are we going to treat our culture in a negative way? So I would always have argument with these two fellows. And then I decided that I'm going to invite the other commissioners from these other countries to my house and have a private session. So I invite the Chinese supported me, the Japanese, Korean, Cambodian, Myanmar, they all supported me. They said this unified approach of Asia to be taught in our schools would be very good for us, all of us. And when I invited these people, I did not invite the two Indians. So then I told them that when we are presenting all this, I will keep quiet. You guys do the talking. Because if I talk, they'll knock me down. So this is what happened. The Cambodian lady stood up, the Vietnamese lady supported, the Japanese said, this is very good. And these two guys did not know what to say, and after that they dropped out. And our proposal got accepted. So this was an official new kind of education policy in the state of New Jersey. Then tragedy happened, which is unfortunate, maybe bad luck or something. The governor said, I'm ready to sign. We'll make it law. But if you want a ceremonial, nice, high profile, then let's do it next month when we have it on the calendar. We'll do it in the mansion in the governor's house and we'll bring the press. So everybody said, let's wait a month. We've worked so hard. We'll do it in the governor's mansion, we'll get nice press and all. But in that 1 month, he had a scandal and he resigned. His career was destroyed. Now, Governor McGreevy, if you search, something happened. We don't have to get into it. Whatever it was. And so the whole commission, all the work we had done, never became official law. We got that close to reforming education policy on Asia in the United States. That's how.
One last question before we ask questions from the audience. So, Vijaya, many of the things that this new critical caste theory is doing, saying that you must ensure equality of outcomes and not just equality of opportunity, right? But America has done nothing like this to deal with race. They may do some affirmative action, but in our case, we have actually ensured quotas for OBCs, Dalits. So we are actually ensuring outcomes, and there are also quotas in jobs. It's not just in the academic area. So we have actually gone far ahead of them in terms of delivering actual outcomes in certain areas, okay? And yet they think that we are the guys who need to fix our problems and they're going to fix our problems. They haven't fixed theirs. How do you account for this lack of knowledge about what we are actually doing to get things done here?
So there are two parts to this. So the first, what they are upset about, even with all the caste quotas, the rigid quotas, is that the success of the different students as an outcome in terms of marks and in terms of jobs, in terms of higher education, is not panning out. So when they ask for equal outcomes, they actually want everybody to get 100 marks in a final exam. And if it's not going to happen even with quotas at the entry level, they are going to bring down the standards of the exam so that everybody gets 100. So that's point number one. Now, America, like everything else, they say affirmative action, but it's getting really hard for NRI Indians and their children to get admission into any of these prestigious schools. Because whether you like it or not, there are quotas. Especially if you're an Asian male, you have absolutely no chance. At the undergrad level, it used to be like that only at the undergrad level. But recently, in the past couple of years, this has entered the graduate school level. Usually undergrad entrance application will have lots of questions on these kinds of social justice type questions, very leading. In fact, Duke University undergrad application has no other essay except saying, do you have anything to write about gender or sexuality issues? Very leading. So as an 18-year-old, if you have nothing else to write about, no other questions asked, you would be either tempted to lie, saying I have some transgender issues, my parents are being oppressive, whatever, or consider some. So there is incenting of various sorts. Yeah. So this is very, very prevalent. Now, at the graduate school level, it used to be in MIT, Caltech, places like that, that you would write a statement of purpose as to what your research has been, what your interests are, where, if you've published a paper, if you worked at, during your undergrad years, if you worked with any professor in any lab, and recommendations, things like that. Academic merit-oriented. In fact, you should know this. When Americans say merit, it does not mean they add an adjective. It's an academic merit versus sort of other merit. So there is that fine difference, right? When they say people of color, they will say historically oppressed people of color. That means it doesn't include Asian. So these are all very nuanced language. So now if you look at graduate school in MIT or all these technical institutes like Caltech, there is an essay for social justice. Tell us how you bring diversity to the class. So that's a little nudge towards saying this is my sexual orientation, or I feel like a woman in the morning and a man at night, and yeah. So so number one, although you have affirmative, there are actually huge quotas in America. The law doesn't allow it. You can't call them quota, but race can be a consideration, and it's a huge consideration. At the undergrad level, it's also becoming a huge consideration at the graduate level. And now, for example, Caltech has a summer program where they bring in students and coach them so that they can apply to Caltech, and sort of a bridge program. So they're doing all of that, which is all good. I mean, nothing against giving people support, but the goal is equal outcome. That until they achieve that, right, they'll do anything. They'll change standards, they'll rig the system, they'll remove the rights of others. And that is why meritocracy is under attack, because the outcomes are not equal. And until and unless the outcomes are equal, meritocracy is from patriarchy.
Okay. Right. So if anybody would like to ask some questions, please do that.
Thank you. Very happy with your second book. Very simple question. Maybe you already worked.
It's a 6th or 7th book.
No, very happy with this is my second book of Rajiv ji. Sorry. So just wanted to understand what has been your role in terms of engaging with the government, Indian government. I ask this question because a lot of great work has been done by the foundation for a very long time. And given the number of graduates coming out of our universities who are half woke, half confused, and we have a lot to cover, and we are degenerating very fast. And the other side is moving very rapidly with all the AI and algorithms going very fast. So I just wanted to know, with the NEP coming through and a lot of work on the education side, academic side happening, Has there been any progress? Because it can be impactful if we start off, and that's my
So
question.
that's a good question. So there is bottom-up influence and there is top-down influence. So let me discuss both. The bottom-up influence, which is spreading awareness to people like you, has been exceptionally successful, because you will see now so many people have these YouTube channels and they're talking these issues only. I mean, they're talking, whether most of them won't acknowledge our source, but privately they will say that this is where I got my ideas, this is why I got into this thing, it transformed me. So some of them are media people, some of them are into YouTube channels, social media channels, a lot of Manthans, conferences where the Breaking India theme is now quite widely talked about. The being different theme about what's distinct about us is talked about. The, Tejasvi Surya mentioned this, the book Battle for Sanskrit, and how it got the Shingeri Mutt to cancel the seat they were going to do, and the Sheldon Pollock. So we've had a lot of influence in a lot of different ways like that. But then the top down, which means where the seat of power, the official authority, the resources of the state can come into play, we have not been successful. So we have had many meetings with HRD people, we've had many meetings with the Prime Minister's office, we've had many meetings with all kind of culture, whatever. And they are basically received very well, and they're very nice, very polite. And so many ministers invited us to their home and had brought all the bureaucrats, said, help this guy, this foundation. Once Javadekar called us so many times to his house, and in fact we were sitting there, he had 7 or 8, all the top bureaucrats in the HRD ministry, the chief secretary of this, that, whatever, they were all there. And he said, now each of you have to go around and in 5 minutes say how you will help him. I want action. He was really serious. But they all said nice things, and everybody it was like, you come to our office tomorrow, we'll fix it, we'll figure it out, we'll do it. Nothing happened. It was all run around, give me this proposal, then write that, and go to that place, and then fill out that form, and go. We just felt like cheap. We are running around like as if we are looking for ourselves. We don't need anything for ourselves. We are helping you do your job. It is your job. You are the Sarkari guys. You are supposed to do this job. You don't know how to do it. We are a free consultant. We are not taking anything out of it. We just want to give you advice and get something done. And so, but there was this defensiveness. There was this ideological barrier also. So after a while, we just got tired and said, who the hell wants all this? What about bunch of nonsense? Never heard of the Lakshmi Mittal and family South Asia Institute at Harvard, and all the things we're talking about that they've done, sponsoring some of the same people that we are fighting in India are being sponsored there. So this sort of thing, when they hear, there is certainly that shock that, okay, I better do something. And some of these people said, okay, I need some copies. I'm going to ask my people to read it and give me notes. So this is encouraging. But whether this translates into action, who knows? I mean, I'm being very honest.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Rajiv ji and many like him, because 15 years ago, I was as a Gyani as the people that they talked about. And it was thanks to him and his ilk that there is a little bit of Gyan coming in. But my question was actually a little bit on those lines. What I want to know, see, when we hear all this, it's very depressing and it's very black. There are a lot of dark clouds. But looking forward, I mean, we are looking to Amrut Kal and 25 years and so on. Looking forward, do you see that there is hope? Do you see that this whole issue will eventually succeed or win?
So I can tell you what would be my wish and how to make it happen. So my wish would be that the Prime Minister or the Home Minister or the Foreign Affairs Minister should call these billionaires and say privately, just come and we want to talk to you about what's written here, and we want to find out from you why you're doing all this and what is your motive, and can we change this around. And what it would take to change this around is simple. If these billionaires given all this money would call Harvard and say, we want to change the discourse being done in our name, and we want to be like the way Chinese are being treated, and we don't want our countrymen to feel that we are betraying them, even though we are not, our intentions are not bad, but it may come across like that. So we want this discourse changed. And whenever there's a conference in our particular school or center that we funded at Harvard with our name on it, We should have people both sides. If you want to bring in critics of India and India is not a democracy and India is fascist, if you want to bring people who talk like that, we should also have people who are talking about the India story, how India did manage the COVID properly and how it is helping the underclass and what all the government has done to help the poorest people in this country. We want to talk about the good sides also. So let's bring in an equal side. I think if the billionaires took this stand and said, look, this is fair because this is what you theoretically believe in and this is what we want you to do. And if you don't want to do it, we'll pull out, very publicly saying we wound up our thing here. It will be such a slap in the face of Harvard. It would be that this kind of leverage, if they had the courage, they should use it. So it needs, what we are doing is putting some pressure from the public. You people, the more you are succeeding, helping us make the book successful, the more you're putting pressure on these people who are funding this stuff to stop funding it or to question it or to at least do an annual report. What we ask them is, do an annual report on how your money is being used, but don't have Harvard do the report, it will be self-serving. Have an independent, we'll be an independent auditor, we'll bring in other people, and we will look at all the papers, all the articles, all the conference people that are done in your center over there, and we will give you a report and an analysis, and we'll give you then you can do like anything you want. It's like an audit. At least that much they should do. So the public pressure is our weapon. Our weapon is that bottom-up public pressure will produce some results. Because believe me, people in Delhi and people in Mumbai who are these billionaires and all that, the Delhi government people, they do worry when there's public pressure. They do take our advice more seriously.
Notice there's a lot of indifference and ignorance among the Indian masses about the likes of the work of yours. Like I keep posting about this on social media, but the traction that I get for this is minuscule as compared to maybe music, pop, or some travel posts. So, and apart from that, when I try to engage, I see that a lot of, they're trapped in utopic ideas, not realizing it's just in their heads. They don't want to know about our history, our civilization history, history of maybe Abrahamic faiths, nothing. Not realizing that their indifference is going to invite our own peril to our entire civilization. So how do we deal with such ignorant, recalcitrant bunch?
Well, what you've raised is a very important thing. We need more social media help. So in this meeting, in this visit, we have started an Infinity Foundation chapter in Bangalore. And those of you who are interested in playing a role, helping with social media or what in any way, should contact one of our people, like this young gentleman, and approach them. I think we can make a difference with good number of people who want to be active on social media, take this message across in a systematic way. In a systematic way, it will work. It's 1 + 1 will be 11, not 2. It'll happen. So because social media is a weapon we need to be able to use properly. And we have the brains, we have the smarts, we have the topic. We have so much content here. You could write 100 little articles out of this. You could do a few dozen PhD dissertations with the material that we have and much more material that we haven't published. So we are a source of amazing amount of knowledge, well-researched, and we need more people to kind of make this into an activism and movement out of it.
Congratulations, Rajiv ji and Vijaya ji, and thank you panelists for their thoughts. Sir, a quick glance at today's audience gives us an idea of the average age of the people who are interested in this discourse. My question is, how do we improve the share of voice of Indian youth in this discourse of our civilizational renaissance, who are instead unwittingly busy attaching their preferred pronouns on their social handles without fully understanding the toxic woke mindset or the gender studies?
Good.
I think one of the things that we don't do as parents of young children is to ensure that we pass on civilizational knowledge. We expect the school to do a lot of it, thinking that if they go at 8 and return at 3, that somehow magically the teachers would do it for you. We don't take into account the curriculum that is being taught. We are not interested in what the NCERT is doing. neither do we supplement it with other things. As parents, I think one of the biggest responsibilities you have is to hand over, because you're a custodian, so you have to hand over what you have learnt from your forefathers to them. The other thing to do is to be courageous and pull children out. I mean, these kinds of degrees, I mean, I have 2 children, but if I had 4 more, I would not send them to school or college. I didn't send mine to school, I sent them to college. But if I had 3 more kids, I would not send them to school or college, because there are ways of, it doesn't mean I'm against education. You can find fabulous education with working with a master, like a master apprentice kind of model. So there are ways to be different and pull out if this matters to you, till such time that the system has changed. If we wait for the MHRD to change books and your kids will be in college and have their own kids, then we've lost a generation. So I think we have to be courageous and bold. Just pull out of the system, form co-ops of other parents, like-minded parents who are support systems for education. And you'd be amazed at what can be done.
Namaste to all the panelists over here. Congratulations, ma'am. Congratulations, sir. So in the month of June, I was approached by a page called Finding Temples, who also writes for TNO. And he approached me because I'm an architect and I'm quite young. I'm just 24. People of my age are busy attaching pronouns before their names. So the problem with which he approached me was there's a very dangerous agenda being pushed by Rana Safvi from Jamia Millia Islamia University. She is a historian over there. And one of her disciples, the son of William Dalrymple, Sam Dalrymple, is the one who's interning under her. And they are pushing a very dangerous narrative of Mughlai temple. They know that they have lost the narrative and they cannot attract the Indians by just pushing Red Fort and Jama Masjid. So in the field of architecture also they have started entering. And in fact, I do run a blog related to Indic architecture, and people like me who do architectural photography are generally more focused on glorifying what the architecture exists in Delhi. The problem was when I discussed with him, Sam Dalrymple, he came up with certain references and I came up with my own side. There was a very old interview from DD National which covered some of the old Hindu temples of Delhi. By the end, I got blocked on Twitter, on Instagram, and even Finding Temples page got blocked, and we have no access to what they are doing now. And when I tried to reach some of the faculties in SPA, Delhi School of Planning and Architecture, which is kind of like IIT of the architectural field, the conservationist architects turned their back when I approached my senior, who is also from that, he's an alumni. He told me one simple thing, that you're not going to reach to them. They are least interested in it. So, sir, what?
They are what?
They are least interested in this issue. So, sir, what do you think can be an issue? I mean, can be the solution for this? And how can people like me actually do to correct this narrative?
So, you're very special and we want you to connect with our people because we'd like people like you to work with us. So, this Dalrymple is a fellow that we have had many problems with. He is the brains behind Jaipur Literary Festival. So while they have some token people on both sides, deep down, for instance, they've cancelled me. I was invited once, and based on what I said, they don't want me back. It's very clear. So I didn't know about his son doing all these things, but I'm not surprised. Now, if you have this story, this anecdote, we will like to publish it. We have a whole Swadeshi Indology website, and we publish these kind of stories. It puts pressure on people. And if there is some way you can be involved with our chapter in Bangalore to push this idea further, we would encourage it. Because we are going to start having these Swadeshi Indology conferences again. We stopped due to COVID, but we'll start having them again. And we invite papers of this kind, which are bringing out information that otherwise does not get out. And that's very important to do. And you're a 24-year person, very sharp, very clear thinking, and courageous to stand up and do all this, even though your superiors are not encouraging you. That's exactly the type of intellectual Kshatriya we like to encourage.
In this new world order where a handful of people are going to control the entire world, so like these people are so powerful, like they have the power to topple governments, or they are probably funding governments. So how are we to fight? I mean, can it be done at just social awareness, public awareness, or individual governmental level?
So, China has protected itself from this there is this new world disorder. The new world order will come later, but first they want to break down structures and create a new world disorder. And in the new world disorder, out of the rubble, there'll be a lot of forces competing to take over and create a new world order. So that's the thing. Now, China has protected itself. They've gotten rid of the wokeism. They only want collaboration with American universities for STEM education because they want the technology and science, and by hook or crook, including stealing it, even they want it. But they don't want any wokeism at all. They've cancelled many of their collaborations with the Americans. Same way, Russia, Putin is actually very openly against this. Putin has made speeches saying that this particular thing we don't want. France, Macron, now this is a great US ally, has his education minister has spoken that this liberal arts from the United States we do not want because it is telling us things which don't work in our country. Because these wokists were saying that the minority Muslims are the oppressed and the French culture. He gave a very interesting thesis. I'll just take a minute. This is very important. He said the French Revolution was about individual rights, not rights of collective identities. Very important point. He said this groupism is not the French idea of democracy and the French idea of revolution, liberation. The French liberalism is that every individual, as an individual, will get equal rights and we treat him meritocracy-wise and we give him equal rights. It is not that this group as a collective will do collective bargaining with the state and get a certain share of state power as an identity. So it is against identity politics, and that is not the kind of liberalism, and if they want it, then they don't belong in France. Very openly said it. Macron said it. So, and he's not some kind of fringe right-wing or extremist kind of guy. He's a pretty well-respected person. So, this kind of a thing is happening in some countries. In Hungary, it's happening. In Italy, they have a new leader who thinks like this also. So this anti-wokeism pushback is happening in many countries. So in India, the government has not understood wokeism, which is what we're trying to explain. It is not some American disease that those guys do and ha-ha-ho and, they're fools. We are taken seriously. So we are hoping that this will be taken seriously because I think we have a government that once they understand the seriousness of this, and this is a national security issue, then they'll do something about it. So that's our hope, that there has to be enough public outcry on this, public awareness and public debate, discussion, enough people writing about it and spreading this, that the government will notice. And I feel from my visit this time in Delhi, that the government is beginning to get concerned.
So I am Sri Krishna. I am 18. I am studying in a Jesuit institution. So those of you who are not aware of the word Jesuit, it means it is the Society of Jesus. So this institution where I study, I have found a lot of cancel culture there, as it is common there. So my question is, how do we make our Swadeshi movement reach these masses? How do we make our Swadeshi movement reach the masses of the forces that are trying to break India, but are actually living in India with a delusional mind? They think that this is what is good for India. The thoughts that they have about India, this big secular thought, the modern thought, the thought of having these gender pronouns, all of that leftist ideology. So how do we make our Swadeshi movement reach them? Thank you.
What's your name?
Sri Krishna.
Sri Krishna. So I have a request. I want you to connect with our team and join the Infinity Foundation Bangalore chapter, because we need exactly people like you, and we will help you, build you, nurture you, make you part of the team.